Shalom Aleichem. Look at the Sicha, volume 21, the Sicha on Purim. So the Rebbe begins by sharing with us the Medrash that Mordechai heard the words of three children and they gave him courage. Let's take a look at the language. So this is quoting from the Medrash that Mordechai saw three children. This is right after the decree was issued. Mordechai saw three children coming from school, and he asked them, recite for me your verse. It was a concept that children would say their verse, and it was seen as somewhat of a prophecy, if you will. So the child replied, do not fear sudden terror, nor the destruction of the wicked when it comes, right? The verse of Al-Tira. The second replied, I read today, with this verse I finished school. Devise a plot, but it will be foiled. Speak a word of not stand, Hashem is with us. This is Utsu Eitz of a Supar. And the third child replied, until your old age, I'm unchanged, etc., etc. Adzikna anihu. After Mordechai heard the children's response, he laughed and rejoiced greatly. Haman asked, what brought such great joy? And Mordechai said, because of the good tidings I received, that I will not fear your evil plot. When Haman heard this, he said, the first ones that I'm going to kill are going to be the children. These three verses from three different places in Tanakh, they become famous because at the end of every davening, they are placed in most Siddurim, certainly in Chabad Siddur, in that order, Al-Tira, Utsu Eitza, and Biyad Zik. Like everything that the Rebbe reads in Teda, the Rebbe takes it extraordinarily seriously. This is real. It's not just, hey, a nice, cute thing, Mordechai heard for the kids. And the Medrash tells us another piece of interesting inspiration. This is a big deal. It's pivotal. The Rebbe wants to know exactly what's going on. So the Rebbe puts forward a few questions. The big question is, well, the questions I'm highlighting on the screen by underlining. So I guess we'll go in the order. When the Medrash tells us the story, it emphasizes he saw three children. He could have said children. They happen to be three, but when in Teda, in Medrash, nothing is superfluous. To the Rebbe, and this is how the Rebbe is trying to teach us to learn Teda. This is Tedas Hashem. This is godliness. So the Medrash wouldn't say he saw three children. He saw children. And then it could proceed to say he spoke to one, he spoke to another, he spoke to a third. But when it emphasizes three children, it's making a point. It's three. Like, why? And then it emphasizes they were coming from school. Who cares where they're coming from? Maybe they were coming from the dentist. Like, why is this relevant? Does it matter if they were coming from school when he asked them about their verses, or maybe they were going to school? Maybe they were in the park playing. I mean, what's this emphasis? Again, this is the way that Rebbe teaches us to look at a Medrash. It says it because it's important, not just because that's what happened. The other question that Rebbe asks, the order of the three verses is kind of strange. They're out of order in Tanakh, because the first one is from Mishlei Proverbs, which is in Ksubim, the writings, the third part of the Torah, whereas the other two are from Yeshaya, Isaiah, which is the second part of the Torah, from Nabi. So those two should have come first. And even if you want to say the order was, sometimes you go from back to front, from bottom up, if you will, but then it's not that way either, because the second pasuk is in Isaiah chapter 8, and the third one is Isaiah chapter 46. If those were reversed, then maybe we could say we did it backwards. But so we don't have even the backwards order. So why is it in this order? You might be thinking, like, what kind of question is that? That's what happened. But again, being that the Rebbe says that the Medrash is telling us this, because this is not a small thing. This is a big deal. This has made it into the Medrash. This was supposed to happen. This is Hashem giving a message. And this is very critical to the whole story of Purim, and it brought him Simcha at a time when he just heard about this decree of the final solution. It brought him not just Simcha Gedaila, great joy. This is a big deal. So clearly, it had to come down exactly the way it did. Three children coming from school, and that they should say these verses in this order, not in the natural order, which would be the verses the way they are in this order of Tanakh. Why? What lies within here? And also, if Mordechai was so excited about this news, this was to him prophetic, as many commentaries see it. So that's it. He should have been happy, or at least been calmed. Instead, what immediately followed is that he ran into the street and he cried a horrific cry. Vayitzak za'aka gedola umara, a giant, bitter cry. And this wasn't staged. This is Mordechai Yehudi. This is the Rebbe of the generation, tzaddik of the generation. And he walks into the street with a sack and ash, and he's crying a bitter cry. He is completely shattered. And that happens right after this when he laughs with great joy. And that too clearly can't be staged. This is real stuff. How do you reckon this? This is prophetic, and therefore it brings him great joy. So it should calm him to a degree, to a great degree. Maybe he still has to do stuff but to bring it about. Maybe he has to make a vessel in a natural means, etc., etc. Whatever, get the Jews to do tshuva a little bit. But this crying bitterly, as if the decree is still standing with its full glory, how could that be? Plain questions, but they're all so strong. Checking if I covered all the questions. Also, the Rebbe says that, notice the details. Again, to the Rebbe, every detail. The first child immediately started to speak. The language is often the language in the Medrash, Pasach v'yomar. He opened his mouth and he spoke. No introduction. He just said the verse. The second gave a little introduction. Well, I was in school studying, and when I finished studying, this is the verse I finished. Like, why is that here? So obviously that's important enough to make it into the Medrash that the first one said it without introduction, and the second one gave an introduction. So the Rebbe is bothered by the language. I'm pointing out that I underlined all these questions. Good tidings, which I received. It's not good tidings, it's prophetic tidings. Nothing good happened yet. So if the way many of the commentaries interpret this, that the reason why Mordechai was happy because he saw this as a mini prophecy. So he should have said for the prophetic tidings, the good prophecies. Prophecy is not a tiding because nothing happened. It's not news. It's prophetic words. So why does he use these words? This was good tidings. So these are the Rebbe's questions. Okay, just to quickly repeat them, but again, they're all in front of you on the screen in the underlines. What's the emphasis of the three children? What's the emphasis they were coming from school? What's the order of the verses? They seem to be out of order. What's the difference between the first child that goes without introduction and the second who gives an introduction that I've been reading and I finish with this verse? And finally, what's the concept of the good tidings which I have received? Why is it good tidings? A good prophecy. I'm going to underline one more section here. That Mordechai laughed and rejoiced greatly, and that represents the question. If so, why did he then go and put on sack and ashes, and cry bitterly? Okay. So the Rebbe comes along and says, based on all of this, first of all, it's clear that he didn't see this as a prophecy. And the Rebbe's not arguing that there's such a concept. A child says something, but that's not what made him happy. The mini prophecy. He didn't see this as, okay, it's a done deal. That's not how he saw it. He didn't really see it as a real prophecy. So the question is, so what did he see it as? So the Rebbe is going to explain. The Rebbe is going to explain by prefacing on the bottom of the screen, what was the reason for Haman's decree? We have the simple narrative of the story, and then we have the midrashic narrative, as explained in the Medrash and Chassidus. And we know that these two are often contradictory or opposites, but they're not really. It's like a body and a soul. Rabbi YY uses the language that when you have the simple narrative, and then you have the midrashic narrative or whatever, or the Chassidus, it's like the music and the harmony. That's a very good analogy. They go hand in hand. It's the rest of the story, as we like to say. They can't be in conflict at all. Both are true. But this is what happened on the surface, and this is the reason. This is the symptom, and this is the rest of the story. So the reason why Haman made the decree, why he wanted to do the decree, the way the Sicha presents it is, what are the reasons why Haman made the decree? And it gives reason 1 and 2. But if you look at them, one is asking why he wanted to do it, and one is asking how he had the power to do it from on high. One is the music, and one is the harmony. So why did he want to do it? Mordechai doesn't bow. 'So that's why he wants to wipe out a whole people. Aha! Because they told him that he's part of the nation of Yehudim. And Haman said, that's a big problem. I have to wipe out the whole people. And analyze it. The Rebbe analyzes this, that Haman did some investigation about this Jewish people. You see, if you're a prime minister, the whole nation is bowing to you. And there's one old rabbi who doesn't want to bow. He's a stubborn mule. You're going to go and try to get a decree to wipe out his whole people? Like, why? They're all bowing to you. This one old guy is an old guy. Maybe he's arrogant. Maybe he's too proud. Maybe he's too lazy. Maybe he's just a stubborn mule. Take care of Mordechai and you're good to go. No. Megillah says, Vayives Be'inav. He was disgusted by the idea just to do away with Mordechai. Why? Because the people told him about Mordechai, the nation of Mordechai. He said, aha, we're going to wipe them all out. What's going on? They wipe them all, men, women, children. So the Rebbe explains the logic here, and this is a fantastic thing. Why doesn't Mordechai bow? Because he's a Yid, and he knows that this whole idea of Haman walking around as if he's someone, as if he's important, is just a lie. Excuse me. It's just a lie. There's a Eibishter, and you don't bow to anyone. And someone says, I'm important, no one's important. Here today, gone tomorrow. This whole business that you're something and we got to bow to you, it's such a lie. And Mordechai sees right through it. And when you're a bully like Haman, all it takes is one person to call you bluff. The whole country is bowing to you and one person is not, and it bothers you. Yeah, because you know he's right. You know he's right. Like the emperor's new clothes. Everybody's bowing. When one person says, what do you mean he got nothing on? He's nothing. He's a baloney. Who the heck is he? And because that's the Jewish approach. It's the Eibishter that's eternal, that's real. Human being is humble. He's lucky he's here in the grace of God. This thing that about to be, it's just a lie. A Jew doesn't tolerate it. And Haman sees Mordechai's approach. He knows that it's the truth. Furthermore, he knows that where does it come from, such an approach? That's a Jewish approach. From the human egotistical perspective, we don't look to recognize that there's some greater truth. I'm here and I'm in power. I'm important. Bow to me. Let's call it the Goyish approach. There's a Jewish approach that says, are you kidding me? You're someone, I got to bow to you. We're all here by Hashem's grace. We all understand that all there is Hashem, something bigger, something real. And we're all equally nothing. That's a Jewish thing. This shedding the light of truth, of purpose, of Achdus Hashem, it's a Jewish thing. Because humans, by virtue of ego, before the Jewish contribution, which changed the thinking of the world, that's not a normal thought process. And therefore he says, Mordechai is calling my bluff. And I know he's right. It's a Jewish thing. Aha! It's that nation who has a true God, who has a truth, and doesn't tolerate this lie. But why are they all bowing to me? Because they're afraid. But they don't really believe that. They all believe like Mordechai. I hate them all. It's a very important part of the Sicha. It's a very important part of understanding what Purim is all about. He wanted to kill them all, even though they all bowed to him, because he realized that they don't believe a second what they're bowing. And therefore, so the Rebbe points out, this is Haman understood. And Haman, in his perverted way, like every anti-Semite, understands sometimes what the Jew is more than the Jew understands. The Jew is some regular person. You want me to bow? I'll bow. Haman says, you're lying. You don't really want to bow. You don't believe a second what you're bowing. You're a Jew. You can't believe in this lie of Haman for 1 second. And that's why every anti-Semite hates every Jew equally, whether the Jew is Mordechai or the Jew is bowing to him. Because he knows the truth, that a Jew doesn't buy this nonsense. Which is sometimes why the anti-Semite reminds us who we are. And in this case, says the Rebbe, if you want to know what a Yid is, it's defined over here, unfortunately, by Haman. He's Mordechai. All of them. Even the ones who sinned, the ones who bowed, they're all Mordechai. That's really what a Yid is. And that's the survival of a Yid. That's the strength of a Yid, the miracle of their survival. They're Mordechai. They're a nation that's Yehudim, that deny anything besides Hashem. And they live by virtue of Hashem's miracle of Jewish existence. So why was he able to make the decree? And the answer is because the Yidden, on some temporary level, abandoned their true identity. Not he was able to make the decree because they bowed to him, because Mordechai refused to bow to him, rather. On the contrary, if the Yidden had all refused to bow to him, Hitaka would not be able to make the decree. He wouldn't like it, but he can't start up the Eibush to make a miracle of Jewish survival. Because the Yidden were not true to themselves. And what is the identity of a Yid? A shadow of Hashem, Hashem Sicha. A Yid is here only by virtue of the miracle of Jewish survival, which is Hashem. The identity of a Yid, Yehudi, means a representation of the truth. Hashem Echad. That's what a Yid is. When the Yidden come and say, no, we're not. We'll bow, it's all good. It's a big problem now. Jewish survival is in danger. Spiritually. Because your identity, imagine if I'm using the example Hashem Tzilcha, that Hashem is the shadow of a Yid. If I'm your shadow, and I block something between me and you, I no longer exist. The whole Jewish survival is a miracle. It makes no sense. The identity and survival of a Jew is Yehudi. He's Meida B'chol HaTeira, he believes in Hashem and in nothing else. Ultimately, even on whatever level he's conscious of it, but that's what he is. God forbid we deny it and turn our back on it. We're no longer here. It's just a consequence, not even a punishment. So the Rebbe brings in the Sicha, it says in Mefarshim, says in Gemara, because they bowed to the idol, either because they bowed earlier to the idol that Nebuchadnezzar proposed, or because they bowed to Haman, or because Haman had an idol around his neck. In the footnote, the Rebbe brings an alternate thing. It's all opinions in the Gemara. So obviously all true, that they were worthy, so to speak, of destruction because they enjoyed the meal of that wicked king. The language isn't that they ate at the meal. The language is that they enjoyed the meal. The sin wasn't that they ate at the meal. And there are many opinions that hold that he gave kosher food. You have to go to the meal, go, whatever. They enjoyed the meal. And it's explained that this is similar to the bowing to the idol, because all these reasons go hand in hand, or to the bowing to the Haman. The people came to a place where they said, wow, we can enjoy this meal. We have a king. We have our peace. This is the first time the Jews don't have a Beis Hamikdash, right? They don't have the Jewish monarchy, etc. But they landed in Golus, and it's a good Golus. They have a king, and he invites them to the party. They feel welcome. They're enjoying their welcome. And they feel okay. So what is the Yid saying to Hashem? I'm okay. I don't need you. I don't need the miraculous providence that keeps the Jewish people going. We have arrived to become a nation among nations. But that's what they were saying. Yes, for the last 1,500 years since Matan Torah, the Jews were totally surviving on miracles and in the presence of the Beis Hamikdash and everything else. No, now it's Golus. We have a Goyish king, and we're living among Goyim, but we're acting as Yidden. But they invite us to the party. We're one of the citizens. He wants us to bow. We'll bow. See, all these reasons are really interconnected. The Jews made peace with Golus. The Jews identified themselves as just another people. And we have a king, and he likes us, and we're enjoying that. We're enjoying that benevolence. We're enjoying that space. We're okay. So no, thank you, Hashem. We no longer need that providence. But without recognizing that we don't exist without that providence, we're his shadow. All we are is his ambassadors in the world. All we are is a Chelek al-Kamimal Mamish. And every year, no matter how religious or secular, their very existence screams, and it muvade. There is a God, there is a truth, and there's no place for giving b'tachin in anyone else, including a benevolent king who seems benevolent and invites you to his party. There's no place in giving any power and bowing, which represents total subjugation to a human or to an idol. And all these things, not that they just triggered a punishment of destruction, God forbid, of the Jews, but it would be a natural consequence. That they've sort of forfeited their existence. So that's the rest of the story, says the Rebbe. And this is why Mordechai is extraordinarily worried. You see? So the two reasons that are given for the Zedus Haman are opposites. In Haman's mind, he's going to wipe us out because we don't bow to him. In truth, he has the ability, God forbid, he came this close to the final solution because they did bow to him. Two are two sides of the same coin. Haman himself understood this truth, that the Jew and bowing to him are in conflict. A Jew is just Hashem Echad. He instinctively knew that that's what the Jew is. The proof is that it wasn't sufficient for him to just wipe out Mordechai. He had to wipe out the whole nation who were bowing to him because he knew that they're not really. He knew that they're really Jews. They really don't buy this whole thing. But the fact is that they did bow to him. The fact is they did go to the party and enjoy it. The fact is they did bow to the idol by Nebuchadnezzar. And therefore, this was a big problem for their survival spiritually. And he was onto something without even knowing it. Mordechai is horrified. He's not afraid of Haman. He's afraid of what makes Haman powerful here. And that is the fact that the Jews have turned their back on what they really are. If you turn your back on what you are, you no longer exist. It's a massive problem for Mordechai. How righteous is this? How gorgeous. How different is this story of Purim? It's not a fear from a tyrant. It's a fear from losing connection to who we are. Comes along Mordechai and he's walking down the street. The decree just came out. And he says, what's going to be with these Jews? They've lost their soul. And now they're fair game. Rahmanul Islam. Heaven forbid. So he meets the kids. And the kids start telling him psukim. Before we get into the details of the psukim, the common denominator of all the psukim is, we believe in Hashem. Our faith is strong. Mordechai says their faith is strong. Aha! They will be okay. I will be able to inspire them and bring that faith out. Clearly, there was a breach of faith. There's a problem, and the Jews have now bowed. The Jews have enjoyed the king's benevolence, etc. They've lost their faith on some level. But that's only surface deep. And if I put some effort in, that emunah will come out, and the Jews will survive and thrive. But how do I know that the emunah is there, and it's not all lost? The loss is only surface deep. Look what the kids are saying. Kids say what they're educated, and this is what they believe. And all of them are saying the common thread of all three children is Hashem's in charge. We believe totally in Hashem. Nobody else has any power. There's nothing to worry about. Mordechai says, wow, the kids are saying this. These people are okay. They just need a little inspiration. So this is not that Mordechai is saying it's a prophetic thing, that everything's going to be good. Mordechai doesn't decide reality based on what it says in the morning newspaper. He looks, as it says in the Megillah, Mordechai Yodas Kol Asher Nasa. He knew everything that happened. Translation, he understood the whole story. The Yidden were about to be annihilated, Rahman al-Islam, because they lost their sense of viewing Yehudim. When he sees the three kids saying the message of Yehudim, it's all about God, there's nothing else to fear. He said, it's going to be okay. We got some work to do. We got to inspire the Jews. We got to do tshuva, but it's not lost. That's good news. It's not a prophecy. It's not a magical thing. They said it's going to be good. Let's go home and party. Oh, but it's good news that all is not lost. Let's get to work. And that explains why instead of walking around happy thereafter, he was very happy at the moment because he knows that there's hope. But now he's got to get to work, and he puts the ashes and cloth, and he's crying a bitter cry, saying, Yidden, do tshuva. You have what it takes. You could do tshuva. But he's awakening them to that tshuva because there's a lot of work to be done. And the Rebbe says this explains also why it says they're coming from school, you see. It's important that the children have internalized this message so much. They're not just saying it while they're in school. You know, we all know when yeshiva, that's what we say. That's what the yeshiva bacher says. No, when they're away from school, symbolically what the Medrash is teaching us, proverbially, the Medrash is teaching us, this was the way children spoke in real life. They were coming from school. They're out of school already, but they've taken that message from school. They've been taught this truth of emunah. This is very, very encouraging to him. So let's tackle the questions on the screen that we asked based on this. So we explain why it says coming from school, that this is the thought process of the children even when they left school. We explain why it says that he rejoiced greatly, even though he later cried. This wasn't about a prophetic thing. It also explains why it says good tidings and not prophecy. Mordechai is not looking for a prophetic magic pill. He's looking for the Jews to be able to turn this around by reclaiming their emunah. And he sees they could, so he's very happy. This is good tidings, not prophetic. And it brings great joy, but this is not the end. Now he's got to cry and do tshuva and invoke the Yidden to do the same. It's unbelievable stuff. The only questions that are left is what's the emphasis of the three children and why in this order. So let's go up to the next screen. And we're going with the concept that he's going to show that the emunah is alive and well by the Yidden. And they're worthy of turning this whole thing around and reconnecting to their true identity, which is what happened, right? The whole year, the Alter Rebbe says in Torah, not one Yid agreed to denounce his Jewishness and thereby be saved. Haman offered that ultimatum, not like Hitler. Haman offered you an out. If you denounce your Yiddish guy, God forbid, your faith in Hashem, you're saved. Not one Yid. So Mordechai's plan did work. Took up people that were in the lowest of the low, they all bowed except for Mordechai. And he turned them around with his leadership, with his tshuva, and with the help of his children. 22,000 children, etc. So this is a pivotal part of the story. This is the beginning of the healing. It's almost like the refuah, the healing comes before the illness. And even before he put the sackcloth, he saw that there's a glimmer of hope, a powerful glimmer that the children will bring the parents back. So let's take a look. So the Rebbe says there's three children, and the Medrash emphasizes that there's three because there's three levels of emunah here. In addition to the main point that we made already, that this is about emunah, but it's emunah at a very strong level. And the Rebbe talks about three levels of emunah, and these things are discussed in different places in the Discourse. And the Rebbe brings them here together to show us these three steps. They're not all the same, and that's why in this order. One is the most basic. I have faith. Don't be afraid when something happens. Something already happened. It's bad, but I'm not afraid because I have faith. The second is nothing happened yet, and I believe it won't happen. It's a much higher level. I'm going to call it bitachon, trust, not just faith. We'll leave the third on the side for a second, but what's the difference between 1 and 2? This is based on other sichas, and the Rebbe here touches upon it briefly. You know, the first level of emunah is that I know bad things could happen. They do. Maybe a bad thing already happened. Because I know Hashem's in charge and he has a purpose, it's all for the good, I'm calm. I'm not afraid, I'm calm. Because Hashem is in charge. Even if something happens that's bad, but I know that there's some plan, it's all for the best. Something bad happened to a person, God forbid. Maybe Hashem is punishing him, maybe it's cleansing him, maybe there's a purpose. He accepts it. Higher level, a much higher level, is not just emunah, but bitach, not just he believes, but he has trust in Hashem that everything will actually be good. But sometimes things are not good. So the Rebbe and the Sichas deals with this, and it's not here the place to go into the detail. But the general concept is that sometimes before the fact, the person has to have total bitachon, it will be good. After the fact, if it was meant to be, and Hashem knows his reasons, you accept it and you embrace it. But how could you before the fact even have bitachon it's going to be good? Maybe I'm deserving of a punishment. Maybe it's some kind of thing that I'm have to do for a tikkun for the world. How can I be so sure it's going to be good? That's what the Rebbe translates. Not it will be good in some heavenly way, but reality. So the Rebbe explains elsewhere in the Kota Sichas, famous Sicha, Trakut Betzaingut, in volume 36, that the bitachon itself makes it happen. It could be I'm not worthy of having the good. Proof is that bad things sometimes happen. Not worthy, or something I have to take care of, or maybe in whatever, I could be a very high level person, but Hashem wants me to be on a higher level. And because of any one of these reasons or many other reasons, it's supposed to, God forbid, be bad. By the very fact that I say, but what do you mean? Hashem is in charge. He takes care of everything. And I really own that concept of bitachon. Obviously, it takes work to own that. Now, what do you mean? Of course he loves me. Of course he's going to make it good in a real way, in a revealed way. That itself is the tshuva. That itself is the tikkun. That itself accomplishes whatever Hashem's mysterious plan had to accomplish by, God forbid, bringing the tzara. There's no need for it. Unless, God forbid, it does happen, and then we have to accept that it was meant to happen regardless. Again, this is very complex and easy to say and not so easy to do. But this is the difference between level 1 and 2. I'm calling it emunah and bitachon. The first one is he's calm. The Rebbe says in the Sicha of Lamed Vav of volume 36 that this is called like menucha. He's calm, even though bad things can happen, and they happen, and they even happened. Look at verse 1. They're not afraid for things that come, that they came already. Still not afraid. But something bad happened. I know Hashem's in charge, which is true. Everything's for the good. Then the second child, this was the first child. But the second child was a much higher level. This is why the first child just said one verse, because all he had was one verse. The second one said, you want to have a verse? I've been reading all day. This kid's a shikol Talmud Chacham. He's a high level. But I'm going to tell you the verse I finished with. It means the highest level I came to. Indicating in the diuk of the Medrash that this is a high level of education, a high level of munah, going from munah to betachon. Not just I know Hashem is in charge, but I know it's going to be good. And the Rebbe also explains that now the faith has been integrated into logic. He knows it. He has an explanation. Ki manu keil, God's with us. It's not just a munah pshuta, a simple munah that every yid has naturally. That's a gift from Hashem. That's great. Whoopie-doo, you get it naturally. No, this has been developed through avodah. The child now, the yid now, has taken the natural munah, which every yid has as a gift, and he's learned chassidus, and he has Chabad, and he has midas. He owns it, and therefore he's trachten good, and that itself makes it good. It's a whole different level. And the Rebbe and Mordechai sees that this second child, this higher level child, says, "You're kidding? We're ready for Chelek Lamed Bav and Lakut Sicha. We're ready to see that Hashem is mamish holding our hand completely. We're not just saying things are going to happen that are bad and there's a reason. It's not going to be bad." So it's integrated into the person's mind and heart. It's a Chabadnik avodah. It's a whole different level. It's not all for the good, but all will be good. Remember, the whole idea of the whole journey of the Jewish people is to bring about within themselves and through them to the world that Hashem Echad. It's all Hashem. The first way we make Dira B'Tachtonim to bring God to the world is within ourselves. And this Purim is a huge step in that direction. Started at Har Sinai and it continues in Purim. But this is a big deal. You want to see Hashem Echad? Not only have Emunah Pshuta. Emunah Pshuta doesn't yet show that Hashem Echad. It means my neshama believes. My mind doesn't. But my mind follows my soul. But when my mind starts to own it and I taka believe it in logic, that's a different integration. In the macro, it's Hashem Echad. Famous conversation, people would ask the Chabadniks in Russia when so many Purim Yidden were caving to the communists and dropping Yiddishkeit, and the Chabadniks were continuing with the full force. They should never be tested. They asked them, how are you doing this? How are you not afraid of Stalin? So many great Chassidish groups and other groups of Purim serious Yidden, they caved, they couldn't handle it. And Chabad was the one who stood the test of Stalin. How? And the Chassidim answered to the others, God. We know there is a God. In that line lies the concept of Chabad. Take emunah and bring it to knowledge. Don't just fall back on the natural faith that Hashem gives every yid as a gift because you're a child of Abraham. That's, of course, the core of everything. But the idea of Chabad is integrated to make it part of your thinking and daven with it, and the midas, and the human being, the physical, let's call it the nefesh habahamis of the person, is now on board with the nefesh halikis and with the neshama, with the pintel yid. That's a giant quantum leap forward in Achdas Hashem within the person, and thereby within the world. So Mordechai loves this. And then the third one comes, and this is the zinger. And he says a phrase, which brings out another whole step. What does the phrase say? That even if a person's old, he shouldn't worry about old age. It's all good. Hashem's going to hold his hand to the end. Because I made you, I'm with you. So the Rebbe says, what is the point of this? Old age is a natural thing. You could tell me I'm not afraid of an enemy. Hashem's going to defeat the enemy. I'm not afraid of old age. Old age is reality. Hashem made old age. It's part of nature. Hashem's not going to contradict his own nature. And as people get older and they know old age is not fun, and a person could worry about it. What's going to be, or how's it going to turn out, how's it going to play out? It's a very worrisome thing. It says to this child, I'm not afraid of old age. What do you mean not afraid? Hashem will help me. What do you mean Hashem will help me? He created old age. What do you mean he's going to help you? He's going to fight against himself? This is his own system. It's one thing to believe that Hashem is so powerful that no bad guy could win him. He could defeat them. It's a whole different thing to say that even nature, he hasn't let go of the reins for a second. This reminds me of what the Rebbe explains the sin of the Meraglim, the spies. If the Yidden were in the Midbar, they believed in Hashem's power. They saw these miracles every day. Suddenly, they did not believe that he could take over Eretz Yisrael. And the answer is, the language is that, yes, Hashem could control. He's the strongest power. But that's when you're in the realm of miracles. But when you go into the realm of nature, which is Hashem's system, he's not going to defeat and override his own system. And therefore, when you're going into the land and you're living a natural existence and you're dealing with kings and countries, you don't have a chance. Even Hashem can't do it, so to speak, because it's his own system. Similarly, a person will often, you'll find that a Yid he has beliefs. He believes in the miracles and he believes in the stories of the Torah and he believes that miracles could happen and that they happen. But when nature says that this is the reality, suddenly we lose faith because this is nature. This is not some evil guy, some despot who's getting up against us and we say, Hashem, wipe him out. This is nature speaking. Nature is Hashem's system. It's a much harder level to believe that even nature is totally Hashem's and totally is controlling it. And therefore, there's nothing to be afraid of. A lot of people are very big believers. They know everything's in Hashem's hands, but old age, they're petrified. Or whatever, the doctor gives a report that medically there's a problem. They're petrified because this is nature. Nature is not some evil enemy. Nature is Hashem's creation. Nature does what it does. What are you trying to control it? The highest level of moon is yes. And here, the way I'm translating Hashem, faith becomes reality. Faith is not just faith. Faith is not even logical. Faith is reality. This is a glimpse of Mashiach's world. When nature screams Elokus, when you can't pick the fig on Shabbos because the fig says, how could you pick me? It's Shabbos. When nature becomes Elokus, when a Yid starts seeing his nature as part of reality, part of the Eibishter, then it's Hashem Echad. So there's 3 steps here. Parenthetically, just to clarify, it's explained in Farshim that this is the 3 steps of the Tzach Hadash B'Achav. First part, it was taught that there's a God, as it says by Makas Dam, B'Zois Tedek Yinei Hashem. Then he was taught that the God B'Kereb Haaretz, as it says by Makas, the 4th Makkah. Orev, Ani Hashem B'Kereb Haaretz, I'm in the world, and that's with those 3 Makkahs you saw the difference. That those 3 Makkahs, the animals and the Shechin, etc., only affected Yidden and not Mitzrayim. Was the first 3, it wasn't like that. So the second set was saying what's saying in number 2. It's integrated into logic. It's part of reality. Hashem's not just in charge, but he goes door to door. And then the third set, is to show that even nature cannot stop him. He's the strongest power. And that's why in the last set of Makkahs, we saw nature overridden the whole time. It wasn't just a nest, but it was a nest working with Teva. Fire and water became the hail. In the middle of the day, it's also dark. And it's light to them, it's dark to them. The concept of contradictions, that nature is not independent and nature is God, this is the highest level. Because very often, in our own personal growth, that's what this is all about, becoming a Yid, becoming a Maimon, revealing that Emunah, we go through these 3 steps. The first step is a person starts to dive into Hashem and say, there's really a God. It's real. It's not just a make-believe. And you sit and worry and obsess and you're anxious about what's going to happen. You believe there's a God. Yeah, there's a God. He's in heaven. Does he know my name? Does he know my problems? Does he know my issues? Does he know what I'm dealing with day to day? He's a God. Of course he's a God. How else can you have such a gorgeous world? But does he know me? That's step 2. What do you mean? That's integration. Hashem becomes personal. Hashem becomes real. And it brings a certain sense of betochen. But then you have, again, we should never be tested. But even after that, then you see the Yid worrying and everything else. You say, what are you worried? There's a God, and he knows your name. Yeah, but did you hear what the doctor said? Did you hear what my accountant said? This is not some kind of joke. Reality says, and this is natural. This is a reality which God put into place. Natural reality says that this is a very bad situation. What do I want God to override nature? He should change the numbers in my bank account. He should change the chart that the doctor said. Came along the Lubavitcher Rebbe and all the brachas that he gave, and he said, just have a little amunah and betachin, and things could change miraculously, because at the end of the day, Hashem Echad. The Rebbe always did it through nature. The Rebbe always had you go to the doctor for another opinion. And then you went. If you had right betachin, you were zeicha to the miracle. And then suddenly what they saw was gone. It was gone. We know all the story that Rebbe told people to make farbrengens and celebrate when there was no chance of the child surviving the accident. Because the Rebbe is bringing to our generation, this is the first generation of Geula. He's bringing us to that place. What do you mean? The doctor said, what do you mean the child is burnt and there's no chance? What do you mean there's no chance? What happened to God? Think God's just in heaven? You think God's just good for miracles? God is nature. It's a whole different level of integration. It's Achdus Hashem within the person. And ultimately, that's what Hashem is going to do. I mean, that's what Mashiach is about. That's what Geula is about. The whole world will have the Aleph and the Geula. Hashem's presence in reality. So this whole story now becomes pivotal to Purim. It becomes what Purim is all about. Everybody knows, what is Purim? Hashem's name is not in the Megillah. We wear a mask to represent that everything is masked. Everything seems to happen up Teva. Purim is Yom Kippur. Purim is such a great thing. It's much greater than anything. Why? Because the other Yom Teva speak about miracles. Purim says, no. Hashem is part of the world. Hashem is the world. There is nothing else. It's the greatest Yom Tov. And that's why, coming down to the end of the Sicha, the Rebbe says the famous thing, which I brought many times, look at the Sichas and Nechsidis from the Gemara, that Purim was the culmination, the ratification of Har Sinai. So on a Talmudic level of it is because in Har Sinai, the Jews were forced to accept the Torah. The mountain was over their head. 1,500 years later was the first time the Jews had freedom, and they chose it. Apich the mountain over their head doesn't mean a threat. It means that they were overwhelmed by the miraculous presence of Hashem. So what else are they going to choose? Now they were underwhelmed by the presence of Hashem. Hashem's presence was completely hidden. In fact, it would have been very expedient and very easy to just, God forbid, walk away from Yiddishkeit and be saved. And they said, no way, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. This was the first statement to them that they made, that Hashem is taka real. Not Hashem is big and wonderful and he's very compelling. So we're going to go with him. He's not compelling, we don't see him, but he's the truth, he's the reality. And therefore, within the natural existence, the realm of things, they said, we're not doing anything. We're not one yid backed out, not one yid. So this is the famous thing that Kimu v'Kibla Yehudim. And this is spelled out in the concept that in Martin Taylor was all about miracles and faith. It was top down. Of course they had faith. What else? They're eating from God's hand every day. Hear that there's no Beis Hamikdash, and there's a miracle, and there's a Haman, there's a Achashverosh, and they say, no. There's Hashem is real. It's logical, and it's more than logical. It's reality. Come what may, we're not abandoning him. That is bottom up. That's a glimpse of Mashiach. It's like in Kippur, the second luchas is much greater than the first because it's the Baal Tshuva. That means it became them, it integrated, and it came from them. In a more historic level, Purim is a combination of Har Sinai. It became them. That's why Yom Kippur. Perhaps that's why when Mashiach comes, the two Yom Tovim that will really matter, one of them is Purim. Plays it out and says the same thing is, it says that the children are very pivotal in both of these events. Scene one, Har Sinai, the children were needed to be the guarantors. And in Purim, scene two, between 1 and 2, we're now ready for the final scene, the curtain should fall. Here too, the children are pivotal, of course. And why the children pivotal? They're the future, they're the pure neshamas, whatever the explanation is, right? But take a look, says the Rebbe, that they're similar and yet they're so different. In Torah, the parents offered the children. First, they offered the others, the Nevi'im, the Zkenim, the others. After Hashem rejected all, okay, we'll teach our children. Hashem said, okay, but it's top down. We're going to make sure the kids are going to go to school. The children brought it to the parents. The parents were lost. And the children, they were coming from school, which means they had it. It wasn't something that someone had to give them. They were studying and they got the message and they were actually inspiring their parents. And the Rebbe finishes the Sicha by saying that this last point, that what is Geula, that the children, say, bottom up, nature, chinuch, a human being, even as a child, knows the truth and integrates it and owns it. It's real. It's not some kind of education that you tell them, some kind of emunah. You have to accept it. Say after me, Hashem Echad. No, the kid, I'm going to tell you. And it's not just emunah. I see it and I know it. This is key, and that's why the last Navi, Malachi, which speaks about the Bus Agula, what does it say? What's going to happen? That Eliyahu Navi is going to come, and the H of Lebalis Albanim. He's going to bring back the parents through the children, because therein lies Purim. Therein lies this whole message of Hashem Echad. This is great stuff. Kain Tiyel Anu V'Karav Mamish.